Hey everybody, Joe McCall here. Hope you're doing well. Guess where I am? Been here for a little while now. My son has gymnastics. Actually, I really enjoy Fridays because I get to get about 3-4 hours of dedicated, concentrated work done. But anyway, I wanted to let you know a little bit something here about a friend of mine. Just got off the phone with him, and he had some questions about lease options in this business. And his big question was that I get commonly all the time from people is, what if the house doesn't appraise for what the option price is? What if in 5 years, like some are predicting, it won't be 5 years until the market recovers, and house prices are going to have another 20% to drop before they actually do recover? Well, there's a couple things I was saying to him, but I just wanted to repeat this to you too. Nobody knows what the market's going to be like in 1 or 2 years, in 3-4 years especially. It could fall, it could go up. Nobody knows, and so, but you still have to have a price in the contract that you've agreed that it's going to be sold for, and it needs to be a firm contract and a firm price. Now, the seller could decide to lower the price if they want to, but they don't have to. But the other thing is, I make sure in my contracts that the what was I going to say? I forgot. I was going to say, yeah, that the tenant buyer cannot get kicked out of the house if they can't get a mortgage and they can't buy the home. It's real important. It's just not fair to do that. Banks could increase the credit score requirements to 700. The house could drop in value. So I have it very clear in my contracts that the tenant buyer cannot be kicked out if they get a mortgage, if they cannot get a mortgage. Sometimes, depending on the situation, I'll have it set up where the tenant buyer, if the house doesn't appraise, can get the lease option agreement automatically extended another 12 months with no penalty. But you know, one of the things you got to think about when you're telling tenant buyers who maybe have some concerns about this is, well, why do I have to lock in the price? One of the things I say is, well, you got to look at the advantages of lease purchasing. So, yeah, you don't get your lease option deposit back if you don't buy the house, but that could be a good thing. For instance, let's say the value of the house did drop 10-20% by over the next 1 or 2 years. You should be glad you didn't buy it. What if this house that it's the option price of $200? What if you would have bought it today and it had dropped $20,000 or $30,000? You should be glad you didn't buy it. You should be glad you're doing a rent to own. You're only losing $5,000 instead of $20,000 or $30,000. And the other thing I say is, look, if you were to buy this house with a mortgage, you moved in, and you find out, you know what, made a huge mistake. Maybe I got a great job offer down in Florida, and I can't sell the house. Or what if there's serious radon problems in the basement, or there are serious foundational issues, termites, structure damage that you didn't know about, nobody could have known about. What if you find out later it was buried on top of a toxic waste dump? You can't go back to the bank and say, hey, I'm sorry, can I have my money back? I don't want to buy this house. The great thing that I tell tenant buyers about lease options is the house, you don't have to buy it. You can try it out before you buy it. So if they bring up concerns, what if the house doesn't appraise in 2 years? You should say, then you should be very glad that you've bought it with a lease option, that you're doing a lease options and you didn't buy the house. I don't know if that makes sense. I was trying to explain it better to my friend when I was with him on the phone. The other thing I tell tenant buyers is, look, what if the house goes up 10-20%? Are you going to be complaining that you have to buy it at this price then? No. Then the seller's going to be complaining about, well, why am I giving away all that appreciation? So kind of related to this, one of the things I tell sellers is if they're concerned that the house will actually appreciate 10-20% over the next few years, one fair compromise is to let the seller get half of the appreciation and let the tenant buyer get the other half of the appreciation. So in other words, if the option price of the home is $200, but it appraises for $250 in 2 years from now, well, then you could set the option price or the sale price at $225. Let the seller get half of the appreciation, let the buyer pay for the other half of the appreciation. So there's just a lot of things like that. But my main point I wanted to bring up was remind tenant buyers of the benefits of doing a rent-to-own, that if things do go bad, they should be glad they didn't buy the home. And that usually most of the time just kind of quells that argument. The other thing with sellers, when they start bringing up objections, that I was telling my friend on the phone too, with sellers, you need to remind them of their options. Look, what are you going to do if you don't sell this house? I know it's not your best alternative, but you have several alternatives. You could give it to the bank, stop making the payments, and just give it back to the bank. Do you want to do that? Do you want to do a short sale, ruin your credit? No. Well, okay, then you could drop your price another 30 grand so you could sell it and compete with all these other foreclosures on your block. Can you drop it another 30 grand? No. All right, so you can keep on listing it with your realtor. Maybe if you're lucky, you get a price, you get an offer 5% less than what you're asking. Then you're going to have to pay a bunch of closing costs, and you're going to have to fix a bunch of things from their inspection report. You're going to have to pay your realtor commissions, and you're probably going to walk away with 10 to 15% less than your current asking price. Are you okay with that? Well, no. Or you can keep on making payments on a vacant house. How long can you do that? I'm asking them these questions, pushing their pain buttons. Or you could rent it out. Rent it out to a tenant who's going to call you every time the faucet leaks. Or you could rent it to somebody who wants to buy it and is going to take care of it and treat it like it's their own home. So sometimes it's a good idea to present all these different options to the seller. First of all, ask them if they've thought of any other options. Then you can present the options to them and say, look, this may be your least worst alternative. Lease purchases are great. They're win-wins for everybody involved. The seller gets a good, fair price for their home. They're getting somebody in their house that's going to take care of it better than a regular tenant would because they have the more of the homeowner's mindset. And then secondly, for the tenant buyer, it's a great benefit because they get to try the home out before they buy it. And if things really do continue to go south, they're not stuck with a home they can't get out of. So I hope that helps. See you.